God's got this. When I don't know how to fix one thing, when I'm breaking under all this weight I bring, He's still holding every tear that hits my face. God's got this. When I'm standing in a fire I can't see past, when the good days fade and the bad ones last, even when my faith feels smaller than my fist, God's got this.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the God's Got This podcast. If you saw a few episodes ago, I was like gung-ho on doing one every 2 weeks, and that lasted 2 weeks. I say it a lot, the busy schedule, it's an excuse, but it really is, especially right now with school getting started and everything. So I had a bunch of cool guests lined up. They couldn't do it, so I had to revert back to my preacher, Brother Dick. So
Scraping the bottom of the barrel.
yeah, so we was like, man, we got to get one out. Everybody's busy, so Brother Dick, what are you doing? But for those of you that watch, normally our background is a fireplace, and here in Oklahoma, I don't know if we have any out-of-state listeners, but we need some rain. Mm-hmm. So we figure, heck, let's throw it up there, and maybe it'll happen.
Good vibes.
Yeah, it was Brother Dick's idea too, by the way. But Brother Dick, I just appreciate you for coming out here and doing this, and just sharing your heart. I really want to dig into kind of your ministry and where it started. So, again, just thank you for being willing to do this. So we have some in common in the fact that we were both kids of pastors, ministers, mm-hmm. whatever. We grew up in the ministry. My story as a child was kind of the wayward. I went down. I was the typical preacher's kid, right? You were kind of different. You had a different. So, could you just dive into what it was like growing up, where you were from, and whatever, just as much as you want to share about that.
Well, I was born in Kansas City, Missouri. When I was born, my dad was a Free Will Baptist pastor, and so I've been a preacher's kid literally all my life. But I crack the joke all the time that my dad wasn't a very good pastor, so we moved around quite a bit. That's not the case, but it does. We did move around quite a bit when I was younger, and so in fact, I was born in Kansas City, Missouri, but we didn't live there, I think, 6 months before we moved to, I believe it's Topeka, Kansas. My dad pastored a church there. We moved to Manford, Oklahoma. He pastored there. Then we moved to Pryor, Oklahoma, where he pastored there. And then he took a job at Randall University. Of course, it used to be Hillsdale Free Will Baptist College, and was the PR director there for quite a few years.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And he was there 7 or 8 years, and then pastored some churches in the Oklahoma City metro, and then decided to go back to seminary. You're well aware my dad is incredibly smart. Mm-hmm. Was always book smart. He had more books than about anybody I can ever recall. And so he decided to go back to seminary at the age of, I think he was 55 when he decided to go back to seminary, and got his master's degree, and in the meantime took a church in Duncanville, Texas, which is a suburb of Dallas, and was a pastor down there until he retired. And then when he retired, they moved to Sulphur to be close to us.
So he went to seminary. What was he doing before he went to seminary? Like, was he a preacher?
Yeah, he was pastoring.
Like head pastor?
Yeah, he'd been pastoring the whole time. He was actually during seminary. Obviously, it was going to be difficult to pastor church full time, and so that's actually when they moved to Sulphur, Oklahoma, and they lived out at Five Lakes. I know a lot of people, the viewers won't know, but those around here will know where Five Lakes is, and they lived out at Five Lakes. And my mom, they bought a little shop in downtown Sulphur. Of course, that shop is now gone after the tornado, but they bought a shop down there, and Mom ran this little shop. And then during the week, he would drive down to Texas, and he had a little, like a dorm room that they let him stay in during the week. And then on the weekends, he'd come back, and he took a church part-time in Wewoka, Oklahoma, which is about 50 miles probably north of here.
Yeah.
And so they would drive, they had a parsonage there, and so they would drive to Wewoka on Friday night, and they'd spend the night Friday, and then do their visiting on Saturday, and then do church Sunday. Then they would drive back to Sulphur, and then
Wow.
change clothes, pack a bag, and then he would drive to seminary, spend the night Sunday night, and then have classes Monday through Friday and do it all over again.
That's dedication.
It was he was committed. It was a lifelong dream of his to always go to seminary. They just couldn't afford it when he was younger, and then kids came along, and life happens, and he just never got to do it. And so later in life, he wanted to fulfill that dream.
So, so what was growing up, moving around, and what was all that like?
Honestly, moving around wasn't all that difficult for me until high school. I'll talk more about that here in a minute. But growing up, being a dad, for viewers, Free Will Baptists are extremely conservative, and so Dad was extremely conservative, and so I mean, I can remember growing up, hair above the ears, and we wore, church clothes to church. I mean, that was back when you did that, and
like suits,
dress clothes, and my mom, of course, they didn't have a dime, and so Mom made a lot of our clothes, and I can. She's got some old photos of us boys. I've got two brothers, and we'd all be dressed in the same looking suit that my mom had made. Cool. She had sewed, and so that was kind of neat. But I just didn't know any better. In fact, I was probably naive. I would go as far to say that I was naive, because I was always in church, and I was always in the preacher's home, and so I just didn't, I just
kind of sheltered.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I was sheltered, and I don't think Mom and Dad, to my knowledge, I don't think they intentionally set out to do that, but it just was kind of a byproduct of their lifestyle, and so I was probably go as far to say I was naive about the evil in the world, you may put it that way, and then just and sheltered, because I remember when we moved to Pryor, Oklahoma, and I went to elementary school. Of course, our church was a pretty decent sized church, had a pretty good youth group, and went to, a lot of the kids we had 4 elementary schools in Pryor. And so nobody in my church actually went to my elementary school. They went to other elementary schools. But when you went to junior high, all of the kids were dumped into the same junior high. Yeah. So all of these kids that I knew at church, I never got to spend any time with at school. And it blew my mind, absolutely blew my mind as a Christian, that all of these kids that were in youth group that I thought were these just great Christian young men and women, they were like me. They could answer Bible questions. I remember one kid specifically, he could pray like all the adults in the sanctuary. I was so, even the preacher's kid couldn't do that. I was always just wowed by that. We go to junior high, and all these kids get dumped in, and so I start seeing all these kids on a regular basis, and they're cussing, they're lying, they're cheating, and I was blown away by that. Going home thinking, Dad, all my friends are going to hell because of all this sinning they were doing, and so that was kind of the sheltered life that I lived. But I had. Once again, had a really good childhood, preteen, young teen life was really good. I was into music, played the piano a little bit. And so those were good things. I was involved in Free Will Baptists have Bible competitions.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, sword drill, Bible tic-tac-toe, Bible bowl, just all of these. And so we had teams. And so, man, I learned a lot about the Bible from just some of those competitions. We were involved in all kinds of music groups. And so it was really tailor-made. Yeah. Once again, I don't think it was Mom and Dad's intention for me to be involved in all that with the idea that I'm going to be in ministry someday. Yeah. It was a God thing. Yeah. No doubt, looking back. And I hadn't even thought about that, about being 10, 12, 13 years old and God already preparing me for what he was going to do when I was going to be 25.
Right.
I didn't thought about that until now. But thinking about it right now, it's amazing that, God was preparing me even then for a love of music and learning about music. Probably the big turning point in my life was, I say turning point, kind of eye-opening for me was when we moved to Moore, the Oklahoma City metro. Hillsdale College, Randall University now is in Moore, Oklahoma. And so we moved to Moore. And so I went from a 4A school, prior was a 4 school, I believe at that time, and I moved to a 6A school. I was in high school in Pryor. When we moved to Moore, I went back to junior high.
What grade were you
because
in?
I was in 10th grade.
Oh, wow.
But Moore High School was so big that they only had 11th and 12th graders in high school. And so as a 10th grader, I was in high school in Pryor because it was freshmen, sophomore, junior, seniors. At Moore High School, I literally went back to junior high.
Wow.
And so moving to a 6A school, I graduated with 548, but for those watching who know anything about the Moore area, my senior year was the first year that they divided Moore High School and West Moore High School. I stayed at the old Moore High School. Had our graduating classes remained together, I was told that our class would have been the largest graduating class in the history of the United States.
Oh, wow.
At that time. Now, I'm sure it's different now, and it's...
You had 500 after the split?
Even after the split, we had 540. And we were the smaller of the two schools.
Wow. That is crazy.
Yeah, it took over an hour to call off all the names at graduation.
Wow.
Literally. I go to Sulphur High School's graduation, and Cleet Cole, the principal, he calls out the name so slow, I just want to pull out my hair because, listen, he could do it in 10 minutes if he wanted to.
Yeah.
And he drags it out to like 20 or 25 and waits for him to cross the stage.
Y'all were probably just...
It was one name, another name.
Yeah.
One name. So you had two lines going on the stage, and so you had two administrators, and they'd shake your hand, they'd hand you the diploma, shake your hand, take a picture, and off you go. Here comes
Somebody's
the next one.
out,
And so you got them coming. It's double barrel action, man.
Wow.
So it was crazy. Yeah, it was crazy. But what I was getting at is, my faith was probably tested, is probably the best way to put this. When we moved to Moore and going back to junior high, I didn't know a soul. I didn't know a soul when we moved there. I started going to a Free Will Baptist church, one of our larger Free Will Baptist churches. In fact, it was probably the largest in the state at the time. That was in Oklahoma City. Started going there and attending church. So I met some kids in the youth group there that I was going to end up going to school with. And I thought they were good kids, Christian kids, and I learned immediately the first day at lunch. The first day I was at school, we all went to lunch together. They invited me to hang out with them, and I immediately knew this isn't my crowd because they were cussing, they were talking dirty, they were telling dirty jokes. It was just I just immediately, and I had a decision to make right then and there. Because I'll be honest with you, one of the kids was a preacher's kid, and so we were the same age, and so I had a decision to make. I mean, here's a preacher's kid doing the very things that I think are horrible, But man, he's in the in crowd. There was no doubt he had a cool group of friends, and I think they would have accepted me easily, and I could have fell right into that lifestyle and been one of the cool kids on campus. And but I decided, I was mortified if my dad ever found out I was living that lifestyle. But I just, deep down in my heart, I just knew this ain't right. And so I just kind of drifted away from that friend group, and had one of the most difficult times of my life. That semester of school was probably the most difficult months of my entire life. Just because I was lonely, was scared to some extent. I didn't have my license yet, so I couldn't drive yet, so I had to ride the school bus. It's torture to be a sophomore and junior high,
Yeah.
and having to ride the bus home. I was the oldest kid on the bus, and it wasn't even close.
Right. Wow.
And so all these little kids on the bus made fun of me because I had to ride the bus.
Mm.
And had we not lived like 2 to 3 miles away from the school, I'd have walked. In fact, there were times I considered walking anyway because it was horrible. It was just torture. It was horrible. But God got me through all that. And the next year, moved up to high school, joined the choir program at Moore High School, and they had a really good program. They brought in a new high school. Well, nope, it was my senior year. They brought in a new high school teacher because the school's divided. And so the teachers had the choice of what school they wanted to go to as well. And my choir director decided to go to Westmore. I had already decided my house was a lot closer to the old Moore High School than it was Westmore. And I decided I'm going to stay. And so we got a new choir teacher, and we really meshed real well, and all the students that stayed, we just all came together and just had a great junior senior year. I'd probably go back and do my junior senior year every day of my life. I just had from there on, it was a blast. I loved that. But,
okay, so for maybe the one that's the kid that's listening, that's like a junior high school kid fixing to start, that is faced with that situation, maybe they're a Christian and, they're moving school, whatever it may be, what advice would you give somebody who's about to have to make that decision, contemplating that decision?
A couple of things. Number one, and you've heard me say this 100 times at church, but I believe before you get into a temptation situation, and for me, that was a temptation situation. I mean, in that moment right then and there, it probably wasn't as far as being involved in direct sin right then and there. But I knew being involved with that friend group, people group, it was going to lead to sinful situations. I just knew that. And so what I tell young people all the time, and I was a former youth pastor, we can get into that here in a minute, but as a former youth pastor and now pastor, I believe you've got to make a commitment to the Lord before you get into that temptation situation. You've got to be sold out, rock solid on your faith and your commitment to God before you're ever thrust into that situation, because it will be so easy to give in. And so you've got to be committed to that. And I already forgot the second thing I was going to say.
Well, good. The first one was good, so that'll work.
So I would say you got to be committed. And I, for life of me, can't remember what the other thing was.
That's good. So was there? So now you've graduated. Was there a specific moment, like where you got called to the ministry, or was it?
Yes.
Yeah. What was that?
You'll laugh. Everybody will laugh that watches. We had a family that we were really close to in Pryor, Oklahoma.
Is this like close? Oh, this is so. How old were you then?
Well, I was called. I'm giving you a precursor to the story.
All right, sorry.
So back to Pryor, we had some friends that we were real close to. They had some kids that were about my age. They were a few years older. They had a daughter, and the daughter married a young man who actually lived in Moore, Oklahoma, who had some relatives that lived in Pryor, and that's how they kind of got together and started dating and ended up getting married. And he became a pharmacist, and I knew he was doing really well financially. And so I thought right then and there, I want to be a pharmacist. And so throughout high school, I took extra classes. I mean, seniors were taking 3 or 4 minimum classes and getting out of school and working and doing whatever. I had a 7-hour schedule my senior year. I'm probably the only idiot that did that. But I was preparing myself because I knew pharmacy wasn't going to be easy. And so so I took all the math classes, the science classes I could take to prepare myself. I did want to go to Randall, or then it was Hillsdale, but Randall, because Dad worked there.
Yeah.
And I always loved the school, always wanted to go there. And so I thought, I'm going to go to Randall, get my basics out of the way, and then I'm going to transfer to OU that had a pharmacy program, and then I'll get my pharmacy degree and live happily ever after. And so go to school, loved college life, just had a blast. So after my sophomore year, second year of college is when I transferred. I get all my basics done. I transferred to the University of Oklahoma. I got in late, and so because of that, a lot of the classes I'd already filled up that I was supposed to take to get ready to jump into the program there, and I had to take zoology and biology. Those are the two classes I had to, or no, chemistry. I'm sorry, chemistry and zoology. So I take these two classes for one semester at the University of Oklahoma, and I was confident I was failing. Every test, I failed every test in both classes. I'm failing miserably, and I'm trying. I'm studying. I'm trying. I go to the professors. I go to the assistants. I go to lab work. I mean, I'm doing everything you can possibly do to pass these classes, and I'm failing. And I just took that as a sign. God wants me back at Randall. God wants me involved in ministry. I'd begun feeling that. All my friends, close friends, were all ministerial students, and Dad was a minister, and so it just I felt like that maybe what God was really wanting me to do, and I was miserable at OU. Had to drive over there. You couldn't find a parking spot. I bet I got 10 parking tickets this one semester I was there, and it wasn't the fun that I thought it was going to be. And I think in that time, money became not that big of a deal to me anymore. And so I took my finals. I had to make a certain degree to pass a certain grade to pass the classes, and I took the finals and knew immediately I have failed again. And so at the time, Dr. Tim Eaton was the vice president of Randall University. He later becomes president, but he's vice president. And so I call him up because he was my counselor, lining up all my classes. I called him up and I said, Dr. Eaton, I have made a horrible mistake. I want to get back to Randall. I'm going to jump into the ministerial program, and I want to try to catch up with all my friends. And so I want you to load me down with everything you can load me down with and think I can handle. And so my first semester back, that it would have been the spring semester of 92, I think, I took 21 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. To try to start catching.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a lot. It was a lot. but I think I didn't make straight A's, but I made mostly A's and a couple of B's, I think. And then the rest is kind of history. And met Tracy, my wife, there, and we ended up getting married not long after. And so that's kind of. But I think it's important for young people to know that it doesn't have to be this dramatic, bright light from heaven and the hallelujah chorus singing to feel like you're being called into ministry. I didn't get that. And I was a preacher's kid. I mean, and a lot of preachers are preachers' kids. I mean, it just kind of turns out that way. And a lot of I say a lot, there's quite a few preachers, Free Will Baptist preachers that I know are sons of preachers. So it just kind of, I think God works it out that way. It makes it convenient. It's logical. But I never had that instance where I felt like, God's calling me. I've got friends that have had dramatic things happen in their life that they knew right then and there that was God's call on their life. I really didn't have that. It just took being miserable at OU and thinking I'd failed. The ironic thing is, after thinking I had failed those two classes, I got my report card in the mail, and I actually passed the two classes with C's. Oh, wow. And I could have went on into the program, but I just knew that's not what God wanted me to do. Now, I think my wife was extremely disappointed. Well, I bet. She always says, God didn't call me into the ministry. He called you.
Yeah. So then from college.
College was difficult because Tracy and I got married. Tracy came from a poor family. She didn't have any money either. She was going to have to move home. And and we'd been dating already for a year or so. And, you know, it kind of came to a point where we were going to have to make a decision. Are we going to stay together? And which means we're going to have to get married. Is the only way we're going to be able to make it, financially, or we're just going to go our separate ways, because she lived in a little town in Gertie, Oklahoma, which is southeast of Ada, out the boondocks somewhere. And I just knew that, you know, a long distance relationship was probably not going to be in the cards for us. And so we both came to the decision that we felt like marriage was the direction to go. And so we got married. But married life was difficult. We didn't have any money. We're still both trying to go to school. My wife is an RN, so she was going to nursing school. I was trying to finish my ministry degree. Of course, as you just heard, I had fell behind on that. So I'm trying to catch up with that. I'm working nearly a full-time job, and the only job I could find was there was a graduate from Randall who was a store manager at a Hardee's, which is now Carl's Jr., but a Hardee's. And so he hired a lot of the Randall students, and he knew my family, knew my dad. And so he hired me right off the bat. And so I went to work for him. And so I got some raises right off the bat. So I was making pretty good compared to a lot of the others, but it ain't no fun working fast food. That's just no way to put it. It's just no fun. And so that was difficult. Yeah. It was so, you know, a lot of ways our lives really, Tracy and I's, it just was difficult. We lived in a we lived in the apartments at Randall. You're very well aware of how small those little dinky apartments are. And that's where we lived. I mean, for 2 or 3 years. And so I'm in my last year, maybe last semester of school, when I get a call from Brother Brad Ransom, the former pastor of our church. Brother Brad calls and said, "Hey, would you be interested in coming and being the youth pastor at Sulphur First?" Now, once again, another ironic thing is Brother Merle Erickson, who was before Brad, had also called me a couple of years earlier and asked if I was interested in becoming the youth pastor. And you probably, I'm sure don't know this, but I had come to Sulphur and visited the church years before I became the actual youth pastor, with the idea that I might be interested in becoming youth pastor then. And it just didn't feel right. I don't think God was in it at that time. And so we declined. But then later Brad calls and says, "Hey, would you be interested in coming?" And so we went down and fell in love with Brad and Lori and his kids and the church. And so my last semester at Randall, I'm driving back and forth to Sulphur to be the youth. I was the youth and music minister at the time. So I was leading the music and then doing the youth program as well.
Driving back every day?
So driving back every day until I graduated. So I probably didn't start, it may have been March, April, somewhere in there. So it was probably only a month or two that I had to drive back and forth. And then we lived in the parsonage, which became the closed closet, which is now been torn down. Well, actually it was moved, but gone. It's just an empty lot now. So we lived there. And my 3 years at Sulphur were wonderful. We loved it. But just felt like God was calling us to other avenues of ministry. And so we moved around quite a bit after that. Ended up in Noble, Oklahoma, kind of a suburb of the Oklahoma City metro again, just outside of Norman, and worked there for a pastor named Steve Shaw. So I'm just adored. We had a really good relationship. I was there 5 years, but it was in that time, I'd always said I'm never going to be a pastor. I mean, I'd seen the things that some of the churches had done to my dad and business meetings and deacons meetings. And I just decided, I don't want any part of that, man. I just, people can be mean. Even Christians can be mean and rude and cruel. And I just thought, I don't want that. And so I'm going to be a youth pastor. I'm going to be a music minister until I retire or I decide to do something different. And so that was my mindset. So for 10 plus years, I was a youth pastor, music minister, but it was at Sky Ridge where I believe God started working in my heart and in my life to point me to the direction that you are capable of being. And that was probably the other big hurdle for me is I don't even know if I've got the ability to do it. I saw how smart my dad was, and I knew how unsmart I was. And so I was like, I just don't think I could do it. Now, luckily, I was smart enough that when I jumped in the ministerial program at Randall, I took all the theology classes. I went like I was going to be a preacher because I didn't want everybody making fun of me being in ministry and took the easy way out. And so I did it, and so I'm glad I did. And I think it was probably another God thing that God did in my life to get me to take those Bible classes, and so I think God was there. What really changed my mind about it was we started an evening, what we called a contemporary service. I had gone to Brother Shaw and said, hey, we had just a lot of young people moving to the Noble area because Norman was growing that direction. They're building 150, 200, $250,000 homes just left and right out there. Everything's going that direction. I felt like, man, we really need to tap into this. And so I went to Brother Steve and said, hey, would you mind if I did a contemporary service on Sunday nights? We're just going to do contemporary music. I said, you don't have to do nothing. I'll handle everything. I'll take care of the music. I'll take care of the preaching. You guys can do your Sunday night service like you always do, but we're going to go do this. And we had a big Family Life Center. And so we set up a stage in that Family Life Center on the gym floor and just set up chairs around it and kind of made it kind of nifty looking. And we started doing a Sunday night service out there. Well, that Sunday night service just exploded. And we were just, we had 20 or 30 people to start off with. And by the time we quit doing it, we were, running 60 or 70. And that's when I realized I can do this, that it always mortified me. How do you come up with a sermon every Sunday? Yeah. How do you come up with a sermon every Sunday night? Yeah. How do you come up with another sermon on Wednesday night, and all of that? And that thought mortified me. And that's when God showed me that, man, you could preach 100 years and never preach the same sermon. I mean, the word of God is just that deep. And so I realized there's probably two churches I would pastor. One would be some country church out in the middle of nowhere that has a tough time finding a pastor and just thrilled to death to get one. And so I could be a doofus pastor and struggle and not be very good, and it wouldn't hurt anything because these people would just be glad to have somebody. Yeah. So that was my first church I would go to. And the second church I'd go to is Sulphur, because we had such a great ministry there and loved the people. I said, now at the time, I never thought Brad would ever leave. I mean, Brad, Brother Brad, had always said, I'm going to retire here. This is where, he was happy, and he saw himself, ministering there 30, 40 years and retiring. And so I just never dreamed that Sulphur would be an option, but if it ever did, I would be the other church. Well, of course, I never got phone calls to pastor anywhere, and was just continuing to serve when, lo and behold, a deacon in our church by the name of Toby Todd called me and said, hey, Brother Dick. And the ironic thing, I keep saying ironic, but the ironic thing is Toby Todd was in my youth group when I was youth pastor, and now he was a deacon in the church.
So it's Toby's fault.
So it's Toby's fault. So yeah, you guys can have a stoning after church Sunday morning. So Toby calls and says, would you be interested in coming to Sulphur as pastor? And I'm like, even after having talked about it, even thinking about it, it still was like, oh my gosh. Because Sulphur is a really good church in our Free Will Baptist denomination in our state. It's a one of our leading churches. And so I'm like, man, the thought, when it wasn't an option, I thought, oh yeah, I could do it. But then when it actually became a real option, you're like, boy, I don't know now, when it's just staring you in the face, and so, but prayed about it and talked to some mentors and just felt led that, maybe that's the direction God was wanting us to go. And so they were ready to have me come and preach on a Sunday and vote on me. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. So we need to talk about
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And so I asked to have a deacon meeting. And so I met with the deacons one night. I drove down and we met in the pastor's office. And I told him, I said, listen, if you think that you're getting Brad Ransom 2.0, you are sadly mistaken. That's not going to happen. And for the viewers, Brad Ransom is straight laced. He's black and white. He does it by the book, and he is just a great organizer, and he's gone on to write books about that. So
Yeah.
I mean, that's how great he is at that. I'm the opposite. I mean, like this little format right here is perfect for me
Yeah.
because we're just flying by the seat of our pants.
Yeah,
and
that's it.
and I don't want to say that I do that necessarily as a pastor, but I mean, I don't like to just be so stuck to an agenda that we can't allow crazy things to happen, because I think, not that God can't move in either order, but I like the idea of just going with the flow to some degree. And so I told him that. I said, listen, if you think I'm going to come in and I'm going to have schedules and agendas. I mean, I can remember going on a trip, Brad and Lori and me and my wife drove to the National Association. I think it was in North Carolina. And we load up in the church van to drive all of these hours. And Brother Brad has an agenda, a travel agenda, and it's
gosh.
to the minute.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like 12:01. We're going to stop in Conway and use the restroom.
Not me.
At 3:36, we're going to stop and eat in Memphis. Yeah,
Oh, gosh.
we're not an hour down the road, and Teresa's like, "Hey, Brother Brad, I got to stop and use the restroom." And Brother Brad's like, "Well, we're not supposed to stop for another 45 minutes." She's like, "Brother Brad, you better stop right now, or there's going to be a problem."
Yeah.
And she immediately took his schedule, wadded it up, and threw it out the window. So anyway, so I get back. So I tell the deacons, listen, that's me. I mean, that's who I am. I said the jokester, the prankster, the fun young man that led the youth group 10 years ago. I'm still that guy. Now I understand I can't, as pastor, I can't do some of the craziness that I did as the youth pastor. I know I'm going to have to rein it in a little bit, but I'm going to have fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I just, I know this. You've heard me say this before. I don't believe that we're called to be Christians and not have fun.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times did the Bible say, "Rejoice in the Lord"?
Yeah.
I mean, listen. I do that on a daily basis. I believe in having fun, and there's a time to be serious, but there's a time to kick back and have a good time. In fact, our Sunday school class party was last night. I really had a good time last night. It was a lot of fun, and so I back to the deacon meeting. That's why I told them, listen, that's who you're getting. And their idea was, we think we need that. That we've been here for so long that maybe a change of pace would do the church good. And I think they were right on. I think the church has done really, really well in the years since. And Brother Brad was an amazing pastor, laid a great foundation for me to build upon. And so I give him a lot of credit for the success that the church has had.
Yeah. I remember Brother Brad, but not much because I was pretty young. When did you come?
I came in 2007.
Yeah, so I was
You
7
had to
years old.
be 7?
Yeah.
Is that, because
6 or 7.
you know this, I've told you this before, but in my office, I have this shelf, and on the side of this shelf, I have different pictures that little kids have colored for me or drew for me over the years. And one of the first pictures that went on that shelf was yours. You had drew me a picture when I came as pastor,
Yeah.
and it said, Big D, I think is
To
what,
Bro Dick from Big D.
yes, that's what it was. And you had a picture, I think me behind the pulpit or something. I can't remember.
I think that's what it was. But Terry Blaylock still calls me Big D. And I don't know if it's because of that picture or what. I was actually talking to Dad about that not long ago. I was like, Terry every time I see him, "What's up, Big D?" And so I'm like, I don't know if it's from that or just that's just what he says. But
I didn't know that. But yeah, that's
so. What? So you've been in ministry for a long time. What are some of the good? What are some of the good things from being serving a life full of ministry? What are some of like the cool or good or? that you've seen?
Probably
Like, your favorite part, I guess. Your favorite parts
the
of it.
best part is seeing lives changed. I mean, I think you're an idiot if you say anything else, and you're a pastor.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be seeing lives change for the cause of Christ. People who were just lost as a goose in a snowstorm, just knee deep in sin, and to see their lives completely changed and turned around is the biggest thrill in ministry. I you know Next would probably be just preaching. I love preaching. I never would have dreamed I'd have said that 20 years ago when I was thinking about becoming a pastor, that may not be the funnest thing about it, but I love preaching. I love getting into the Word of God, and I love sharing that with a congregation or a group of people, and so that's a huge thrill, getting to do that, but seeing lives change, and I'm involved in all the areas of our church, and in fact we just got back from 2 weeks of camp this summer, and I was there. I was cooking, but I try to get involved with the kids there, and seeing even young people give their lives to Christ and rededicate their lives. It's just a thrill. That's what it's all about, is preaching the gospel and seeing people accept Christ and their lives changed forever, and their future or eternity changed forever as a result.
So on the flip side, what's some of the most frustrating parts of being in ministry? I know it's not sunshine and rainbows.
How long do we have?
Yeah.
We had talked about this, for the viewers. Me and you had texted back and forth because I hadn't, I didn't know the kind of the background of the YouTube channel and the setup, and I kind of had this idea that we had specific things that we were going to talk about and an agenda and all that, and and then that's when I found out, no, we're going to fly by the seat of our pants. And
I know now I'm not going to ask Brad to be on this because he's
going to insist on an agenda. Probably one of the hardest things for me to grasp as a pastor, and I'll probably pick your brain on this a little bit, is people that I know better. And I hesitate to call them believers because I'm not sure they're all believers, but people in the church, my church, any church, who profess to be Christians or believers who are just not living it.
Yeah.
They come almost every Sunday. They shake hands, they smile, some of them go to Sunday school, some of them don't, but they participate. They talk the talk on Sunday morning, and then the rest of the week you're like, what are you doing? Yeah. Because you see their Facebook posts and their social media outbursts. You hear the rumors of what they're doing on Friday and Saturday night. You bump into them at Walmart or the grocery store, and you see their shopping cart is full of this or full of that a Christian shouldn't be partaking in, and it's just, I don't get it. And so I'll ask you that, because I know, for those who watch the show, they know your history. And so, why is that? Because you knew better.
Yeah.
Growing up as and it's funny because the two of us went two different directions.
Yeah, exactly.
And almost at probably the same point in our lives, we both went different directions. Yeah. So why, to pick your brain, why is it that it's some people?
I don't know if I have a for sure answer, because now that I'm on the other side of it, I look back, or I look at, people that I know, and I'm like, why don't they get it? Why is it not clicking? And then I put myself in those shoes, and it's like, I was the same way, and it's easy to get frustrated now, but then it's like, I lived the life of it too. And so I think it's just the devil gets, he just lies, and he's got you, and he's just whispering those little lies in your head, and you don't even really, you don't notice it. I didn't notice it, you know, I didn't think about it. I just was just living life and doing, you know, whatever I wanted to, living a sinful life. And I never, I guess I never really thought about it because I believe that it was like the devil doesn't let you think about it. You know, you don't really
Right.
deep dive into it until
Right.
now. I'm looking back like, how, you know, how are you around it and not,
Let me
not
ask you
get it?
this. We're turning the tables
Yeah,
here. I'm going to
all
ask
right,
some
sweet.
questions. How much, I know peer pressure is a cliche that's thrown around in religious circles and church circles. How much peer pressure being your friends and the people in your life, how much of an influence were they on you to pull you away from the lifestyle that you knew you should have been living?
Yeah, like you said, peer pressure is just it's kind of like a term thrown around, but
Hmm.
it's real.
Hmm.
You know, and who you surround yourself with has has a huge turnout on who you're going to be and
Totally
what
agree.
decisions you're going to make. And so, putting yourself in situations where there's sinful activities going on, there's a
Hmm.
definitely a higher chance you're
Sure.
going to make that decision to do it. And so, um, so I believe, and no one ever like grabbed my arm and
Right.
twisted it and said, if
Sure.
you don't do this, then you know
Right.
whatever. And that's like every time I got in trouble and got caught, my parents were never ones that were like, let me blame it. It was my
Hmm.
decision. At the end of the day, it was me that decided to do whatever it was.
If you'd have lived for the Lord, would you have been the star athlete that you became? Would you have been the popular student that you became? Do you think those things would have came to you if you had pulled away from that peer pressure
Yeah.
and stuck to your commitment to the Lord? Let
I,
me ask you that.
you know,
So I know a tough
yeah,
question.
that's good. I was not expecting to get quizzed on here, but um, you know, I think, and honestly, my mom said this a lot during my athletic career when those moments of like when I would figure it out, you know, and really be striving to get my life on track
Hmm.
and stuff. I was I was playing really good.
Hmm.
I would actually excel at um whatever sport I was in
Hmm.
that moment. You know, and she would always say, you know, she would
Look,
always say that, look,
yeah,
I
yeah,
can tell
yeah,
because
yeah.
it's showing.
Hmm.
Now, would I have been like popular? Probably not. I probably wouldn't have been.
Really?
I don't know. I might have been because, uh, again, nobody ever like put a gun to my, I never really saw any of those that were standing up, like being gun to their
Well,
head.
I guess where I'm coming from, and the reason I ask is because you were a star baseball player. You were a starter on the basketball team. If I remember right, you played quarterback
Yeah.
for the football team. I mean, I mean that's you're it. And in any school, you would have been it. You're the quarterback. You're a starter on the basketball team. You're a star on the baseball team. You're it. And so for me, as somebody who wasn't athletic, somebody who wasn't popular, and saw those guys that were those positions, it seems to me like, and you can tell me I'm wrong, that had you been committed to the Lord, you could have, man, could you have
Yeah.
been a huge
Yep.
influence for the cause of
I
Christ
think
in
so.
other kids' lives
I
had
think
you
so.
went that direction?
Mm.
I understand you're thinking that maybe I would not have been
Yeah.
popular, but see, for me, I think it would have been hard not to be
Right.
popular.
No, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
being the star athlete that you were.
Yeah.
And I think people in your position, young people in your position, I don't think they get that.
Yeah.
I don't think they understand once again, we're talking about peer pressure again.
Mhm.
I don't think they understand how many young people look up
Yeah.
to them.
Not at all.
That's something I had to try to get across to my son,
Yeah.
who was an athlete, not a star athlete, but he was an athlete. And I would tell him, listen, we've got a youth group full of young men and women who look up to you because he was Yeah, you know Jet. He's a lot like me. He likes to cut up and have
Oh,
a
yeah.
good time. He's the life of the party. But he's
Everybody knows who he is.
yeah, everybody knows who he is. But he's a good Christian young man,
Mm.
and I think he was a good influence in that area. And that's something I had to really lean into him on, because I don't think he got that. I don't think he understood that.
No, I don't know why. Maybe it's just again the devil, but
Hmm.
I'm a big advocate on when I speak to unless I'm giving my testimony or whatever, but like through FCA and stuff, that's like 90% of my stuff is
Hmm.
influence, because you don't realize
Oh,
how many little kids, like they don't walk through the elementary school that I get to see now, and everybody's got your number jersey and they
absolutely.
love you and they think
Yeah.
the world of you, and I mean, they literally want to
Hmm.
do everything that you do, and they
That's
see
right.
stuff you don't even realize.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and it's that way, I think, with your friends, and that's something as a youth pastor. You just and as even as a pastor, I preach till I'm blue in the face, counsel people, talking to young people, young adults, one on one, that want to be on fire for the Lord. I want to do better, Brother Dick, and yet I'm just not there. I'm like, dude, you gotta change who you're hanging out with.
yeah.
I mean, I'm telling you that. I feel like that's 90% of it is you surround yourself with people who are dragging you that direction. Maybe they're trying to, but they're not trying near as much as you are.
Mhm.
And it's so much easier for people to drag us down than to go up.
Yep,
And
for sure.
and so I would agree that that's a huge deal. And you'd rather be popular, and you'd rather be a star than to serve the Lord, and may not have that limelight.
Yeah.
And I just thank the Lord. I mean, it's absolute God thing that I didn't go down that path.
Mhm.
And the cool thing is we're sitting here talking about it, and we're both serving the Lord now. And so it doesn't mean that just because you may, our viewers, just because you've made a wrong turn somewhere, doesn't mean that you can't get back on the right path.
Mm.
I was preaching Sunday about the Lifeline,
Yep.
and our Ben and Renee sung this beautiful song called Lifeline, and talking about somebody who's drowning, with all the turmoil that's going on in our lives today, and God's there to throw a lifeline, but you got to grab it.
Yeah.
And so and the Lifeline's always there. It's always there.
Yeah.
God loves us, and he's full of grace and mercy, and the Lifeline's always there, and just people refuse to grab the lifeline and think I can swim back to the boat, or I can swim back to shore, and
Yeah.
so many of them drown along the way. So, but God can bring you back. He
That's
absolutely
good.
can.
That's good. All right. So, you're one we're getting close to shutting it down. So real quick, you're one of many people who played a big part, in my injury, kind of right after a day of, and the following all up till now. But you had a big part of the day of, and so if you don't mind diving in, just kind of what you remember. I know it was a crazy day.
We talked about this earlier. I think I have pre-Alzheimer's, because I cannot remember things. My preacher friends that I went to college with make fun of me. In fact, they think I'm lying, because, Brother Dick, do you remember when we got in all this trouble and we did this and that, and not trouble, but just have fun trouble?
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I don't remember. Oh, well, Brother Dick, you remember that? No, I really don't remember it. But what I remember about the day is getting the phone call. The accident happened, around 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, something like that. I remember getting the phone call. I don't remember who called me, but that you had been in an accident. They were getting you to the OU Trauma Center in downtown Oklahoma City, and that there was a chance that paralysis may be involved. Well, when you're a pastor of a church, you get phone calls all the time, and all the time it seems like it's worst case scenario, and it never, very rarely is it worst case scenario. It's usually Hey, we were in a terrible car wreck, and I'm not sure Grandma Johnson is gonna make it. Brother Dick, can you come? But boy, and I'm right there, and then you get there, and like they've got a concussion and a broke rib, and
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
And you're like, but I understand that in the moment
Right.
it's scary. I get that, and so honestly, when I get the phone call, and I immediately drop everything, and I think Tracy goes with me, and we drive to the city. The whole time I'm thinking, it's everything's gonna be okay, and we're of course we're praying the whole time for that to happen too, and got our prayer chain going. Everybody's praying, this ain't gonna happen. I mean, it's a freak deal.
Yeah.
I mean, very few people on this planet become a quadriplegic,
Yeah.
so it's just
Yeah.
a rare deal.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen here. It's not going to happen to Dawson. And so the whole time I'm thinking that, and forget. We park at OU Trauma, and I'm walking. And once again, I would just never forget this scene. We're walking down the parking lot, kind of turn the corner to where the entry is into the emergency room area, waiting area. And of course, church members, family members, I bet there's already 20, 30 gathered before I could get there. And I remember making eye contact with your dad, and he immediately comes over to me and just collapses in my arms. And me and your dad are close. I don't know if viewers know this. Your dad obviously was our youth pastor for many years, and so through that we were very close. But we didn't do a lot of hugging.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's probably when I knew how bad things were, is to see him react like that and just collapse into my arms and just wailing. Shakes me up today, to see him like that. Your dad's one of the strongest guys I know. And so, we go in, and I just remember everybody's praying. Everybody's just praying. We're just praying. Everybody's praying. But we're also hoping, for the best case scenario, and we're waiting on x-rays, and we're waiting on CT scans, or whatever they're all doing, MRIs. I don't know what all they did that day, but I know we're waiting on all those and waiting for them to come back and to be negative, and we're going to cut you loose from all of the paraphernalia you got on to keep your back straight, and that everything's going to be okay. And we're not, we're just not getting that. And so to know somebody in your own life that you hear stories of people that go through situations like this, but for somebody close to you to go through that, just eye-opening, life-changing. You're not my kid, you're not any blood to me, but you're in my church, and we've known each other for most of your life, and to see somebody that close to me go through a situation like that, and know that there's a chance it may be like this until the day you die. We're praying that God's still going to report me. In fact, we were talking about this the other day, that it's not severed. It's just swollen, and maybe one of these days God's going to wake it up, and you're going to walk again. But to know somebody and to deal with somebody that's gone through that. And let me say how proud I am of you, because we talked about this last night, how many people have gone through, you going to Craig and meeting other people in your situation, have, thrown in the white towel and given up on God. And, why would God do this to me? If I was a believer, I wouldn't even think about believing in God, because I'm in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. And to see you go from a person running from God to now a person running to God, it's just amazing. It'd be a more amazing and a better story if you got up out of that chair and started walking again. I know you'd love that too. But to see you travel, to see you do this channel, to see you go into prisons, to hear about you visiting with youth groups, going to church camps at 10 o'clock at night to do Bible studies with a church group that's not yours, and talking to young people, talking to young adults. I believe that God had a reason and a purpose. I know I can't imagine how difficult your day is every single day, but to see you taking what God has given you and use it for His glory, and to get the gospel out there. We've talked about, you have talked about this before. I'm a pastor. You're just a peon church member.
Yep.
But you're doing more probably for the cause of Christ than Pastor Terry is, because you're out there getting to tell your story to people I would never, ever be able to reach as a pastor who wants to listen to a Free Will Baptist preacher who's 55 years old. But they'll listen to a guy in a wheelchair whose life was dramatically changed physically, but also dramatically changed spiritually. And so it took a lot of guts, and it takes a lot of willpower to continue doing it, because I know there are days that you wake up and you're like, I am so sick of this. And to continue to allow somebody to put your boots on and keep going. Yeah. I would say put your own boots on, but we know you can't do that.
Yeah. Well,
so anyway, God's done a great work in your life, and you keep doing what you're doing. I'm proud of you, and I hope you get a ton more views, and a ton more opportunities to share your story and share the gospel ultimately.
Thank you. Well, is there anything else you want to share, or anything we missed on, or?
Boomer.
Okay, easy now. Easy. That's a topic for another day.
I can't wait. I can't believe you didn't say anything about my orange shirt.
I know. I did notice it when you walked in. I was like, I bet I didn't say anything. But I took a mental.
Some people don't know, but I think it may have been your first OU football game. We went together.
Yep, it was.
Me and my daughter and your dad and you, we all went to an OU football game together, and it was a crazy game because obviously it was before the accident, and we left the game early because OU's winning big as usual, and we had parked at Lloyd Noble, which is like a mile and a half away, and we take a bus back and forth. We decided it starts raining, or it looks like it's going to rain, and so
why we left is because there was
because the storms were coming in, and so we're in line to get on the buses to go back to Lloyd Noble, and its line is so long. And we decided, I bet we could walk down there before the bus would get us down there, and so we take off walking. We didn't get a block away, and the heavens open up, and
this last word.
And so instead of being smart and going back and getting in line and getting on a bus, we decided to go ahead and go to Lloyd, and we were soaking wet. I'll never forget. It was a great memory. I can't believe you didn't become an OU fan after that.
No, not yet. All right. Well, thank you again for doing this.
Enjoy it.
I didn't want you to come on here and brag about me or whatever, but.
It's good. It's good. God's good.
Yeah, He is. Yep. He is. Thank you. All right. If you're listening and somebody you think of comes to mind needs to hear it, share it with them. That's what this is all about, is just getting the word out and winning souls for Christ. So thank you, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you have questions, ask them in the comments and I will answer them on the next episode. If you are wanting to reach me for a speaking engagement, you can reach out through either the God's Got This Facebook page or my email that is in the podcast description. Thanks again, and remember that no matter what you are going through in life, you can always find peace in the fact that God's got this.